So why do 1 million people every year make a trek to see a bunch of rocks in a field? Let's find out. Trains, cars, and tour buses bring in thousands of people every day to the Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, England. In this video, we're going to talk about why Stonehenge is such a big deal. We'll discuss its history, impressive aspects of its construction, and important functions it may have served over the years. Stonehenge is one of the oldest surviving monuments, dating back before the Great Pyramids, in the Neolithic period, aka the New Stone Age period. So it's prehistoric, and we have no written accounts. It was created in several phases for over 1,000 years. The first phase began around 5,000 years ago, when people, for whatever reason, came out to this spot and dug a huge circular ditch 6 feet into the ground. Later on, cremation burial pits were dug into this ditch. Another phase of its construction took place 500 years after this, and during this phase, they got 30 huge sarsen stones, each weighing 25 tons, and they were 13 feet high, and they put them in a circle and capped them with what's called a lintel, which is a term for this horizontal block that rests on 2 vertical supports. And so they built this outer ring. And then inside this ring of stones was this horseshoe ensemble of these massive stones. And I mean, just look at the scale of these. These megaliths rise 20 to 30 feet above ground. But they also go 10 feet into the ground as well. So these are massive. And there were 10 of them, all capped with 5 lintels, each weighing 40 to 50 tons each. It's absolutely incredible. In addition to these megaliths, they also erected these rings of blue stones, which are these smaller stones inside the main inner circle, and so inside the horseshoe there. Now, I think what impresses me the most about Stonehenge is the lengths they were willing to go to bring in these stones to this location. Geologists have declared that the closest place they could have gotten the blue stones is about 150 miles away. It's remarkable. And it's hard to imagine these Neolithic people hauling 8,000-pound rocks over that kind of distance. Now, luckily, the huge sarsen stones were quarried from a little bit closer, from a location that was 20 miles away, which I might add is still an incredible distance for transporting stones that weigh over 80,000 pounds of dead weight. I can't even wrap my brain around this. It would have been a massive undertaking, requiring the entire community to come together. And after those stones were quarried, they would have had to have been lowered onto wooden sledges and then dragged away using what they had available, okay? So like ropes, logs, animal fat to grease the logs, and really just sheer human muscle power. And then once they hauled the stone to that location, they then had to dig the hole, lower the stones, fill it in, and then came the Herculean task of raising that heavy lintel. And to do this, they would have had to create some type of scaffolding to support the 80,000 pounds of weight as they raised the stone. Okay, so again, a massive undertaking. But they didn't just place them on top of each other. They wanted to ensure that everything was secure. So before the stones were raised, they were carved and shaped so that they interlocked with this kind of tongue and groove joints when they were placed together, kind of like what you see with Legos. And you know, this blows my mind because it shows just the extreme lengths they were willing to go to in order to keep these stones attached. In fact, it's been determined that with their tools, it would have taken them 3 weeks just to carve out one of the joint grooves, okay? So their dedication here is remarkable. And, you know, it's not just remarkable in its construction, but also in its design. One of the most intriguing things about Stonehenge is its relationship with the solar and lunar calendar. By the 18th century, they began to note that on the summer solstice, the sun rises above the heel stone at Stonehenge and shines directly onto the center of the circle. And then on the winter solstice, it does the same thing, but at sunset. Now this is significant because it gives us clues into perhaps one of the functions of Stonehenge. The summer and the winter solstice are the longest and shortest days of the year, and the most important dates to track on a calendar. And because of this, many scholars believe that Stonehenge served as some type of lunar and solar calendar, and perhaps even an observatory to watch and track the movements of the sun and the moon. And it's likely that this site, you know, served many functions over the years, to be honest. In addition to those cremation burial pits I mentioned, experts estimate that about 200 people are buried on the grounds. And so there was certainly a funerary function associated with this site. And you know, really, scholarship is just beginning to appreciate the complexity of this site and the scope of this tradition in the Neolithic period. And although there are thousands of standing stone monuments in the British Isles, Stonehenge's scale and setup certainly make it a sight to behold. In fact, every year at the summer solstice, around 15,000 people crowd in to watch the sunrise at this historic and sacred spot. The fact that Stonehenge continues to stand upright amid thousands of years of weather and storms and the rising and falling of civilizations and empires, it shows us that it's much more than a bunch of rocks. I see Stonehenge as an assertion of our humanity and a declaration that humans have an innate spiritual yearning to aspire and transcend, to come together as communities and make these connections between creation and the cosmos. I love Stonehenge not just because of its mind-blowing construction and design, but because it reminds us of humanity's aim to be a part of something much bigger than ourselves. And you know, that's a pretty big lesson from some pretty big rocks. We'll see you next time.